It's the Shitcase Cinema.
Old woman.
Hello! Now it's been a while since I've done a film review, but then the last one was a Neil Breen movie review, which absolutely destroyed my soul. But this one, Hawk the Slayer, has given me energy and power that I can't quite explain, so let's take a look at this unpolished gem. So we see a king looking rather depressed. He's probably just watched a Neil Breen film. And seconds later his son Voltan turns up and kills him because, boo-hoo, he won't share a secret.
The ancient power must never fall into the hands of the devil's agents.
Father!
And let the secret die. Now!
Hang on, so Jack Palance is his oldest son? So when did he become a father then? A second after he was born himself? Anyway, Voltan runs away and the king's youngest son, Hawk, turns up and despite not looking bothered about his dying father, gets the power of the sword. I assume this is what Jack wanted, but I honestly have no idea.
The Mind Sword is now yours, my son.
Oh, the Mind Sword. Sounds very fancy. So Hawk is on his merry way through to who knows where when he's ambushed by some scumbags. Of course, his magic sword helps him out, but surely he can't rely on that. So we get some classic western close-up shots of the eyes, some music that lends itself to the atmosphere of old Clint Eastwood-esque flicks, and then we get this.
Use your sword, pig! Not fuck me!
Say what?
Not fuck me!
Seriously, I've played this many times and all I hear is use your sword, pig, not fuck me. For a film that's a PG, I really don't think this is actually what he's saying, but anyway, he dies. Good. Moving on, Hawk teams up with a man with one hand after he rescues him from a couple of robbers in the woods, and they go on a journey to find a blind witch in a cave. I assume she's a witch. Hawk just calls her
Woman?
like here, I assume she's a nun, but she just gets called
Old woman.
Anyway, the witch uses special colourful hula hoops to arrange a fellowship including a giant, an elf and a dwarf. It's not quite Lord of the Rings, but it's pretty close. I mean, what business does a man, an elf and a dwarf have hanging with our man? All he needs is his sword. Oh, sorry, the Mind Sword. Now here's my top 5 random bullshit moments. Number 1, music is always important in film, and how best to set the tone in a dark fantasy movie? Just slap in some disco-pumped Bee Gees and ABBA wannabe mixture. It makes perfect sense. Number 2, Jack calling this nun an old woman who's probably younger than he is.
I, Voltan, want you, old woman.
We would like you to help us, old woman.
My son Drogo speaks true.
Brilliant. But then age makes no sense when you recall that this is his dad. Number 3, you know something? It was lucky that the king could keep death at bay long enough to explain to Hawk about the Mind Sword.
Quick, the coldness of death is in my limbs.
But thankfully he manages to keep chatting until Hawk has the Mind Sword and then he dies from his stabbing to the heart. Convenient. Number 4, during a flashback we discover Hawk is getting married but Voltan is upset because it should have been him. Not Voltan marrying Hawk, you understand, yeah?
Cannot you find happiness in your heart for our marriage?
No!
And then poor old Jack gets his face burned. And then he kills the not-so-lucky bride-to-be. Number 5, elves can shoot really fast and it's got nothing to do with snappy editing.
Cut him down!
What a joke.
It's no jest.
You know, it all kind of reminds me of another British fantasy film called Krull, which I reviewed many years ago. Funnily enough, this chap, Bernard Bresslaw, famous for the Carry On movies, was also in Krull as the Cyclops. Just a pointless fact for you there. But back to the Mind Sword and nonsense. So in a nutshell, Hawk has his sword, which is ultimately just going to be used to kill his evil brother. So they have to do something different. So they go on a random quest to find some money so they can help the nuns pay Voltan because he's kidnapped the woman. Which woman?
Old woman.
Oh yeah, the old woman who was younger than Jack Palance. Right, brilliant. So anyone seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Old woman! Man! Ma'am, sorry.
I keep thinking of that when I'm watching this film. So Hawk and his band of warriors find the gold that they need when they kill a bunch of goons in the only way they know how. Oh my god, I don't know where I find these films. The leader of the goons is then tied to the ground and his weapon hung from a rope above him, and sure enough he gets splattered. You don't see any gore, but the idea of it is pretty strong stuff for a cheesy film clearly aimed at a younger viewing audience. They need to keep things light and cheerful, like this. Or just show us more scenes of Voltan hamming it up.
You promised me all in return for my sword arm!
I don't know what he said, but he made it sound pretty cool anyway. Why is it every time Jack Palance says something, it sounds like he's auditioning for the Christmas pantomime? Staying with Voltan, he's got himself a nice pet nun in a cage there. But back to Hawk and his mind sword. Now I know what you're wanting to know. Does he ever use its powers for anything? Does he fuck? Moving on, is it just me or does anyone else think that Hawk is a bland hero with no personality? It's almost like the filmmakers walked into a bank one day, spotted a mortgage advisor and just offered him the lead role.
My apologies.
Now by this point the film is really struggling because they have the money, so surely things will be wrapped up pretty soon, but no. So expect to see amazing scenes of the giant and the dwarf bickering over food at length.
You find out. You're the expert.
I don't want to.
Oh, but why not? What are companions for if not to help one another?
Good, yeah? Or this scene with Voltan's son Drogo.
State your business.
You know my business. I am Drogo, son of Voltan.
Whoa, why is he announcing who he is? He's talking to his Uncle Hawk right there. What, did Hawk not know that he had a nephew? You goon!
But I will give you a message. The message of death!
Alright, a fight scene and Hawk is using his mind sword. Why doesn't he just use his mind and make it fly round and kill the bad guys? Well, A, he's a gimp, and B, because of the elf, remember? Words just fail me. So when Drogo dies in his father's arms, Jack hams it up in style.
I tried.
Drago!
Kind of reminds me of Rocky IV. Meanwhile, our favourite zombie mortgage advisor sits around talking to himself and stating the bloody obvious.
The gold is here, and I am here.
No shit, Hawk. And why does Voltan want 2,000 gold coins? Well, I mean, what's he planning on doing? Buying a house with the financial help of his mortgage advisor brother? It's never explained. So he rocks up to the church where Hawk and Co are dwelling and delivers this line.
And this place shall be wiped from the face of the land!
I'll tell you one thing, I can't watch this film without laughing. It really has energised me again. I love it. So an epic battle occurs and Hawk decides to take the fights to his brother. Now prepare yourself for a mess of disco music, mind sword action and elf kills, aka quick editing. Oh, and they fail to get the woman.
Old woman.
Sorry, the old woman, and then they just retreat back to the church. Now while asleep, Voltan turns up and captures our heroes.
We must free ourselves.
He never fails to disappoint us, that lad, always stating the obvious. You know, there's always things that you can say about certain characters. You might say, oh, he's a dick, he's an asshole, blah, blah, blah. But the one that I always like to use is, you goon! So the end is nigh. Now what will happen? Will Jack get his gold coins, or will Hawk become Hawk the Slayer and kill his brother? Well, the blind witch frees them by using magic, aka silly string or whatever it's called. Then they head into a forest and bury the dwarf, who's dead by this point, then go back to the church to kill Voltan. I don't understand why they didn't do this before when they were in the church and Voltan and his gang were sleeping, but whatever. Now, just before we see the final battle, I want to see something else first. Very satisfying, but not as satisfying as the same old shit we're about to be witness to. That is priceless. So how can the end fight follow that up? Easy, epic slow-mo and more disco beats. Why is Jack falling over like he's a drunk? Probably because he is. So he loses because Hawk is the Slayer apparently, and we get to finally see his face. Do you know something weird? Throughout the movie he keeps running to a cave to see a cloaked figure who keeps shooting his face to temporarily ease his pain. Who is that?
Prepare yourself, Dark One.
What does it mean? What does anything in this film even mean? Well, don't bother asking because you don't get answers. Oh, and Hawk keeps the money for himself at the end because he's a thieving bastard mortgage advisor, and then it's all over.
We shall meet again, bearer of the Mind Sword.
Then, whoa, she just blew up a cartoon Hawk. Okay, and that's it. Almost as mental as a Godfrey Ho ninja movie ending.
So he jumps into a tree, gets a ball thrown at him, it explodes and pieces of yellow cloth fall to the ground. The end. Wait, I know these ninja films always end really abruptly, but this is the worst one I've ever seen.
So Hawk the Slayer is very cheesy and laughable, sure, but if you can get beyond its limitations, the scope of it is vast beyond what the budget allows. There's glorious matte shots, or not so glorious, depending which way you look at it. Interesting and bizarre characters, amusing dialogue. Well, there's shitloads of amusing dialogue, but anyway, it's just a pretty entertaining, mindless journey that doesn't have any hidden agendas or box ticking in place. Plus, of course, so for me, despite being just over 40 years old, it's a breath of fresh air and comedy gold. Could even say it's 2,000 gold coins worth of comedy.
For 2,000 pieces of gold, they can buy her freedom.
What are you planning on doing with those gold coins, Jack? It's really going to bug me now. One of life's mysteries that will never be solved. Perhaps it would have been answered in the sequel. Yeah, they were meant to do a sequel, but they never got around to doing it, which is probably a good thing in fairness. So there you go, I hope you enjoyed that. And there's only one score fitting for this film. It doesn't really deserve it, but at the same time it does deserve it. I'm going to give this 10 out of 10.
All 10? You will die by the sword.
Old woman.